Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We have here right now our Agile Network India Bengaluru chapter, and they'll be having a panel discussion on the topic sustaining agility while transitioning to work from anywhere. And Mr. Srijit NT, he's going to be the moderator for the day. Thank you so much, Srijit, and over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Shreya, and thank you, NI Bangalore chapter, for this wonderful opportunity. So, we would like to welcome all of you to the today's Bangalore chapter panel discussion. This is the December 2020 discussion. So, today we are going to have discussion about sustaining agility while transitioning to work from anywhere. So, my name is Srijit. I am practitioner for Agile for more than 10 years. So in the past, I have been doing various roles like a program management, Agile transformation, service delivery, etc. So currently, I work as a senior project manager in the oil and gas industry. So it is a great honor for me to present a esteemed panel today who have are from the leaders from IT as well as non-IT who gracefully accepted ANI's invitation to share this leadership and experience in leading through this chaotic environment that we had in 2020 and how they led the teams sustaining the agility while transitioning to work from anywhere. Without much delay, I would like to move on to panel introduction. So, do we have Jay is not there? So maybe we will move on to Rahul, and once Jay come, we will get back to Jay. So Rahul, would you like to share your uh, introduction and then we can start?
Thank you, Srijit. Good morning, everyone. First, I wish to thank ANI Bangalore chapter for giving me this opportunity. I think this is a great learning platform where professionals, practitioners from various background, they are coming and interacting with each other and learning from each other. Thank you again. So my name is Rahul Wag, and I have 19 years of experience working with various companies like L&T, GE, and now I am working with Baker Hughes. I'm a mechanical engineer, and my career core experience is in the area of product development, program management, support for technical sales, uh, for turbines and compressor, which are used in oil and gas and power sector mainly. So I have also worked in quality function as a Six Sigma black belt, and I am certified Six Sigma black belt, GE certified Six Sigma black belt. In my current role, I am leading the innovation engineering team for turbo machineries at our Bangalore Center for Baker Hughes. And my current focus areas include metal 3D printing, augmented and virtual reality, and advanced material or manufacturing process development. So for validating or experimenting all these technologies, we need a physical lab infrastructures. So where we use a lot of sophisticated equipments. So we have a physical lab infrastructure, and I will try to bring my perspective or my experience from this mechanical industry to share how did we manage, the agility in these current times. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahul. So we will move to Sonali is our next panel. Sonali, would you like to provide introduction?
Sure, thanks. I hope you can see me and hear me well now, Sriji.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so the small crisis was just, another one to tell us that how important it is to be agile this year. So my name is Sonali Anand. I'm VP for professional services with Software AG. My experience has been primarily on services delivery, consulting, managed services. And my experience has been primarily between two companies over last many years. And my association with the Agile, which is in the context of ANI, has been maybe the first in the year 2012 when we first got introduced at Infosys in the early days of Agile journey, and then again with Software AG, where we went through an Agile transformation at our organization level. So I'm really happy to bring my experiences and share with this audience today. And this year has been really truly, big learning for all of us. And I'll be very happy to share what we went through in terms of reacting in agile manner and sustaining it through the crisis.
Thanks, Sonali. So we have Jay on the call. Jay, if you're settled, can we have an intro from you? Jay, you are on mute.
Good morning, everybody, and I apologize for being a couple of minutes late. Just when you need the internet to work well is when it doesn't. And this is just one of the things that we've all had to both cope with as well as make room for as we work remotely and we collaborate and work with teams all over the world. So let me just give you guys a quick introduction to me and my background. I've been at Cisco for the past 20 years, and before that I spent a few years at Siemens. And I've had a wide variety of roles in terms of building products, all the way from developing the software, marketing it, running the product management team, doing business development, and so on. And in the most recent 5 to 6 years, I've been leading large distributed agile teams, building technology platforms in support of cloud automation, ML, AI, and analytics. And my perspective primarily comes from how do we build agility into delivering business outcomes when we are running large globally distributed teams that are building fairly complex technology platforms.
Thank you, Jay. Okay, so now let us move on to the topic that we have today. So when we tell about the term agility, what comes to the top of everyone's mind? So if we just look around in the nature, so what comes as one of the picture that emerges for me is trees and plants holding on to the strong winds in the monsoon, right? So they hold on to the ground, they make get the water absorbed into the soil, and they prepare themselves to grow into the next season, right? So how that get translate into the organizational agility? So when we talk about the organizational agility, it is all about organizations adapting to the market challenges. Maybe it is internal, external, be flexible, adaptable to the customer demand, not to compromise on the quality. They continuously deliver and be ahead of the competition, right? That is what, when we talk about the agility, organizational agility comes to the top of everyone's mind. So keeping that in the background, now let us start learn and understand from our esteemed panel today what is that their experience and learning that they would like to share today for us. So when we look back into 2020, so we are still in the 2020 going to complete here. So it has been a sudden disruption happened throughout the year, right? So there were quite a lot of changes. It was not for one company, it was for the entire world. So how does it happen for the customer perspective? It could be for the employer perspective or employee perspective. It would have made various changes and organizations had to act in agile manner. So Sonali, you had been handling quite a lot of accounts in your organization, leading many accounts there. So looking back on the January 2020 and now in December 2020, so would you like to reflect from the customer perspective or dealing the accounts management view, how it had changed, and what would you like to reflect on something that will be a takeaway for us?
Sure, sure. I can definitely share my views here. So at Software AG, we call this year as BAU, but U being unusual. So it is a business as unusual year for us. So I think when I look back, for the journey this year, in the month of Jan, when we started the year, we were, thinking that this virus is something just to do with China and we are all safe. We also had made plans wherein our teams were going to get together for a workshop in the beginning of the year. And nobody thought that it's going to change so rapidly, that situation is going to be from everyone together to everyone anywhere. Okay, so some of our workshops that we had started planned for, they had to be really changed in a way that week-long workshop in one location had to be distributed into 3 weeks long, 3 hours each day kind of a workshop. And I would say that everything that we did was really reflecting exactly how and what is the right way to get the things working at any point in time. Now, when it comes to customer, I would say that in services sector, we were quite lucky to be able to react much better, specifically because we have been working with customers across the globe all these years. And that means working remotely with customer was not such a big problem. But working remotely with our teams that were regional and co-located was much bigger problem, and which is quite strange when I say that. But if I see how customers reacted versus how we reacted to customers needs as team, it was also slightly different as opposed to in a usual situation. I think one thing which helped us was that pandemic was all invasive, okay, which means everybody was in the same boat, be it customer or be it us, which means getting customer to understand our situation and making them part of the planning and change to the planning was a big part of it. In a regular scenario, our change would have been, for example, a changing requirement or a changing customer demand or something which is driven by customer. But in this case, it was not just one factor that was driving the change, but multiple factors, being our internal teams reacting to change itself was one of those. So I think making everyone part of that decision making was a big thing. And I think going to the agile principles where we say that collaboration versus the tools, I think this was one of those examples where everyone coming together and deciding on what is the right thing to do at any point in time was really important, especially when it came to customer commitments. Specifically, I remember in the month of April, for one of our large programs, we had a very well planned 6-month long project which was going to reach an important delivery milestone. And at that point in time, there was no way that we were going to meet that milestone because we had started working remotely, people not having everything that required to work remotely with respect to their equipments and so on. And then the best thing here to do was, instead of forcing to still meet the commitments, forcing ourselves to meet the commitment, being a little easy on people and on everyone and understanding the situation better and getting customer together to make a decision on how can we rather react to it in a manner which can be both beneficial for the business as well as is realistic from the team's perspective. So such changes to our plans and decisions were really throughout the year is something that we've seen. And I think it just got different and better during the year. In fact, for us as Software AG, I would probably share it a little later. We also had another crisis that struck us during the year, and that really told us that how important it is not to just make a plan and go by it, but be able to change depending on the need of the hour and still be able to meet our commitments.
Great, wonderful, Sonali. That was a great takeaway, right? So we need to make sure that customers are also part of our planning, and planning do not end with the day, one day, right? It's a continuous planning, and every day is like a planning for future. So thanks for that wonderful insight. So now, as we heard about the customer perspective, how that was addressed, we have three areas: the customer, employer, and employee, right? So maybe Rahul, let me come to you for this question. So you address some of the complex IT enterprise-wide delivery, right? So it does not mean that it's a software, hardware, so many things you come bring together to deliver to the customer. So when this surprise came in, how did you address? As you may have some of the labs, as you just mentioned in the introduction, that you need to get the team physically present, but naturally you were not able to. So how did you address this, Rahul? What would you like to share something? Rahul, you are
Sure,
oh,
Srijit.
yeah,
Yeah, sure. So in R&D setup, we have a lab infrastructure with a lot of sophisticated equipments, and these equipments are operated or supervised by some of our expert employees. In a typical technology validation or exploration, so we do a lot of physical experiments either internally and some of them will be externally, because you cannot do everything internally. There is a lot of capex involved. So there will be a distributed execution. So for this distributed execution, our employees or experts are always on the field, either in internal lab setup or in external lab setup. So they don't have that luxury that 100% they can work from home. So I want to highlight one of the project. How did we handle and how did we try to minimize the risk for our employee, because we cannot eliminate the risk, as I mentioned, because they need to be in the field. So we are exploring one technology. In fact, that's for let's say a machine that is used for the metal surface cleaning. You have some of the components coming from the refinery plants, and these used components need to be cleaned first, and then need to tested and checked appropriately with non-destructive testing, and see if this can be reused back in the field. So one of the key step is that to do the surface cleaning of these metal surfaces. So we were exploring one of the machine. How can we whether this machine is suitable for our requirement, and whether this machine can be deployed to all our service centers across the world for doing this surface cleaning operation. In a regular scenario, what we would have done, we would have taken this project. Now we would have gone to the machine manufacturer. Basically, in this case, it's in Europe. One of our expert or employee would have stationed there for 3 to 4 weeks. Some of the used components with a different material, different shapes, would have gone to that location. And then in our experts presence, this machine manufacturer would have done some of the tests on the surface cleaning and the effectiveness of the surface cleaning, to check the effectiveness of a surface cleaning. Once this is done, these samples were supposed to ship back to the Bangalore in our internal lab to do a further investigation, because we need to do a lot of internal investigation before to take the call whether this machine is damaging anything on this component in terms of metallurgy, in terms of form, fit and function or geometry. So we have to do our own internal test once the cleaning test is done at the machine manufacturer's place. So then so in this scenario, we cannot send our employee to the Europe, which was on a high risk zone. Correct? It would have been a very tough ask to ask the employee to go there and sit there for a 4 week, which was a hotspot for the COVID. So we deliberated internally, how do we minimize this risk for our employee? Then what did we do? We actually worked with all stakeholders. We worked with these machine manufacturers, and we proposed a solution. Can we rent this machine? So we rent this machine, bring it in our Bangalore facility, and then train our employees through all our digital solutions possible, working with this machine manufacturer, so that our employee need not travel now to the another location. At least we avoid his travel to another location, but he will have to still, or he or she will have to still do these things in our internal lab. So this kind of changes were like never thought about, assuming that now that's the standard execution model. But now coming into this kind of scenario, the flexing this model was very key for us to minimize the risk for our employees. And I think this will happen now onwards more often on case to case basis. So this is one of the examples. I just thought, how do we minimize the risk for our employee in this tough time?
Thanks, Rahul. I think what we could sum it up or understand is do not hesitate even to flip the business model in this kind of scenario, right? So we will be able to get through, and do not hesitate even if it is like a flipping the business model. Wonderful.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Now we talked about the customer, employer, and maybe next is like employee. That's the next pillar that we want to address. So Jay, let me come to you with this question. So you have various engineering teams, right, in across the multiple time zones. So for engineers, it is like, okay, when many times it is a hallway connect or it is like workshops, how they address the complex engineering challenges and we get solutions. So how did you manage, Jay? Because it was all of a sudden shift, and how the engineering challenges of collaboration connection you managed. Could
Yeah.
you elaborate?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question, Srijit. I think as a team, we went through a lot of different learning curves, and we actually went through fairly difficult prioritization exercises to begin with. When the lockdown started initially, the novelty was interesting, and people felt that they were suddenly getting almost 2 to 3 hours back in their day because they were not spending the time commuting. And then there were cooking experiments, and there was creativity experiments and all kinds of things, and it was generally a happy zone, and work really didn't take much of a backseat. But over time, people realized that we take a lot of things for granted when we're in the office. You stand up and you see your coworker and you have a conversation. You run into somebody in a cafeteria, or you have a hallway conversation, and you make decisions. All of those things are not possible when you're all working from home, and all of these things have to be scheduled. And what that resulted in is days just getting longer and longer, and people just being on meetings continuously to the point where their day would start at 7 in the morning and would not end till midnight. And it started to take a toll on people from a mental standpoint, created a lot of fatigue, and that started to hit us from a productivity standpoint because people just felt that they never got a break. So we looked at a few different options as a leadership team. I think one of the good things was that all through this journey, as leaders, we stayed very close to our teams. We would intentionally have meetings where work was not on the agenda. We would just get together for 30 minutes once or twice a week and talk about everything but work. And then that gives people the mental space to their issues, their frustrations, what can be better or what can be different. And in response to that, we did a few different things. First of all, we started instituting organization-wide time off on the same day for everybody. This made sure that people actually took a break. We started, I think we started with 1 day a month where everybody would just take the day off. And it's not time that you have to log in the system that you're actually using your personal holidays. It's just that the whole organization will not work on that day. And that gave people some mental break. And it also prevented people from having to worry about what is it that I'm going to miss that I have to catch up on when I come back. So once we started doing that, we got a lot of good response to that. The second thing we did was we said, look, a lot of meetings happen because we need to get to a lot of decisions, but you should not feel compelled to attend all of the meetings. There's a lot of what we call FOMO, right? Fear of missing out, where people just wanted to be in conversations because they didn't know how the decision would impact them, or sometimes they may have felt a little insecure to say, well, what if I don't show up in this meeting? Will my boss look at this as me shying away from work? We told people, look, it's okay to miss meetings. You already have fairly long days and you're balancing your work, your family, your kids' online classes, maybe aging parents that you're caring for, maybe somebody sick in the house. We don't feel compelled to attend every meeting. And as a complement to that, we also said every meeting has to have proper documentation, proper communication on what decision was made, whether the decision is final and binding, or if somebody else needs to chime in on that. So we started improving. We were forced to improve our communication model so that we didn't rely on people's presence in meetings to make decisions and communicate the decision. It started becoming more institutionalized through the tooling that we have, through the communication models that we have. And then the third thing that we started to do was we told people that, look, in an ideal world outside of the pandemic, we would have just gotten teams together for a week and run a workshop to get through some of these things. Now we can't do that. So we just have to get a lot better, really a lot better in terms of continuous grooming. And I think a lot of times when teams go through agile transition, grooming is the part that they perhaps mature at the last, because it's a certain amount of discipline that every week you're setting aside some time to groom work for maybe 3 weeks out or 6 weeks out. And human tendency is to focus on what my priority for this week and next week is. So grooming sort of takes the back seat. I think now as an organization, we've gotten a lot more disciplined about continuous grooming. And that also helps us decentralize the decisions and make them over an extended time period. You don't have to make all decisions within a 3-day window. You can make decisions over a 2-week window, which means that people are not forced to get together at odd times of the night. to discuss and debate and make decisions. So I think these are the 3 or 4 things that we did. If I had to sort of retrospect, I think the 2 or 3 things that really hit the home run for us was, one is continuous leadership connect. Second is people getting the mental space to actually take a break and not having to work continuously. And the third, and perhaps the most important one, is taking the fear out of not being in meetings. That gave people the permission to say, I can manage my day better, I can be more productive, and I'm not going to be looked at with suspicion when I'm not in the meeting.
Okay, thanks, Jay. You summed up it well from the employee perspective, and also brought it in how the leadership connect and leadership engagement is very important to sustain the agility and get the team going in the chaos and change management. Thank you for that. I'm looking at the questions that we have. So I think the first question is from Amar. What are the challenges of working with remote team members? So we have got some of the insight here. So uh, maybe Sonali, would you like to add more on this one? You referred some of the technical challenges also you had to address through. Would you like to add anything more on this one?
Sure, sure. So I think the whole agile concept has, in a way, spoiled us to set expectations with our team that being together and co-located is so important, and a lot of things happen on the floor. So the moment everybody started working remotely, we faced a lot more challenges when collaborating with the team. So I think when working remotely, collaboration is one big aspect. How do you get it working? How do you get the teams talk to each other in the same way as they would do in office? One challenge that I often find is that sometimes it's really difficult to get people to turn on their cameras and be face to face, where you can see the expressions, the sentiments, feeling, and all of that, to be able to react better to people. So those things cannot be done remotely as effectively. So I think that is one of those challenges, and definitely the technology and tools, and also having right agreements in place at team level is something that can really help address that better. The other aspect, which is maybe more than just remote in India, is very important. So to give an example, in our teams, we have many people who come from different parts of India, and some of our team members were from far north to Manipur and different other locations. And when this pandemic hit us, the PGs and all were kind of not available, and many people had to travel back to their hometowns. Now, in such situation, where people are working from remotely, do they have right infrastructure to carry out their work in the same manner as they would do from office? Do they have power backup, redundancy, desks, and all of these things became a lot more important. And we started realizing that soon in the month of April, when initial challenges with remote working emerged. So at organization level, we did take steps to make sure that everyone has a working desk, UPS, a redundant broadband connection, and at org level to prepare for longer working from home, the infrastructure support that our people needed, we made sure that that was available, and we supported our teams to really get all of that. But in terms of the teams working closely with each other, I think it was also a learning process. And in terms of challenges, if I have to say top challenges, how do you effectively collaborate? How do you speak up and express your views as you would do in the meeting room? And what different ways can you find out to get the same kind of effect as you would do in person? For example, how do you use your tools and technology better to carry out similar things, like those long one-day sprint planning kind of meetings? Some of our teams, what they did was they made sure that it was a session that was ongoing, but at the same time, given that people would come in and go in, some protocols about when do you come in, I will be right back. Now I'm switched off because this is not related to some of the things that I'm directly going to work on. So please excuse me for this slot, and so on. So a lot of such things, I think, to enable the remote working more effectively, that was done.
Thanks, Anali. So it is like being more transparent and being more open and genuinely connecting as part of a team. That is, if we could sum it up, right?
That's right.
Right.
Correct. I would just
Srijit,
want
I
to add
think
one
there's
more
one
point here.
point.
Sorry, Jay, just to finish on my previous topic, I think the visibility and visualization of work, you know, which is also one of our, lean principles. I felt that that was very prominently highlighted, that it was very important this year. Sorry,
Great.
back to you, Jay. You can-
Sure, thank you. I was just going to make one more point on top of what you did. I think the other piece that a lot of people got a lot more comfortable with is to not expect perfection in participation. Right? In the past, when you got on calls and you probably got on calls from home, it was a matter of convenience for you, either because it was late in the night or it was too early in the morning. And there was an expectation from everybody else that I'm in my office, you're in my home, you're in your home, and your infrastructure or your environment cannot be a bother for me. So try to create a perfect zone for you to be productive and present in the meeting. Now, we've all come to terms that there's no such thing as a perfect setup inside your house to be able to work. There's always some amount of distraction, some amount of ambient noise. You may have a toddler that will come into your meeting, bang in the middle of when you're about to say something, or your dog may bark, or there may be maybe somebody at the door, and it's just everybody. So I think the tolerance level for being able to deal with this and sort of accept that this is the reality that we're in. You can't get irritated about these things. Everybody has a life and everybody's balancing things. I think the tolerance has improved a lot, and sometimes it's also led to a nice icebreaker in terms of you're in the middle of some really animated conversation, and then the dog barks, and then just the dynamics of the meeting changes for those 2 or 3 seconds, right? So I think it's made some of those things a lot more real compared to the perfection that we try to achieve when we're all physically in the office.
Okay, great. So accepting people as people is important. Right, thank you. So let me go to the next question to Jay. Rahul, maybe would you like to address this question? How did the organization think about having extra budget as part of the allocation to support infra expenses? Would you like to share anything on that?
Sure. When these things actually happened, I'm sure there was no allocation plan for this, correct? But we all
Yes.
had to really do something in a quick turnaround time. So some of the infra expenses, if you see, laptops, monitors, ergonomic chairs from the office, these were something which were readily available, so which were given to the employees. But what was an additional things like, reimbursement? I don't know, not many organizations provide that, correct? So there is a variability, the reimbursement for broadband and all that. uh, so at the beginning when we spent, it looked like, an additional expenses, like, we even did our annual gift. Typically we give it towards the Diwali time, but we give it little early, and we gave router UPS to avoid any the connections related issues, correct? So we spend on this. In the beginning it looked like we are spending a lot, how the money will come. But as you continued, you would have seen some of your operational expenses, what your transportation subsidy, food subsidy, all those brought some sort of savings to you when employees were working remotely. So over a period of time, I would say it balanced, and the cost, there was hardly any additional cost required what we provided at the beginning of the this pandemic. So this is specific to my experience. I'm sure similar thing would have happened in other organization and how they manage the budget allocations.
Agree.
Yeah, I would like to share some from my side as well here. So, like I said earlier, this year, the crisis hit us twice at Software AG. So while we were going through all of this, we also had a incident which kind of brought all of our systems down. And in such case, we could not even allow people to use our office laptop, and which meant over a weekend we had to ship, lease, and beg, borrow, still do whatever to get our systems back online. and our employees back online to be able to continue to provide services to our customers. Of course, some departments such as internal teams or R&D could still wait, but the customer commitments could not wait. Now, what we did was also to rent laptops and ship them over and make sure that there is minimum security aspects on the laptops pre-installed, check, verify that all of that is done. So I think some of these were definitely unplanned expenses, but it is a cost of running the business as well. It is, what is the right thing to do at that point in time? Is it that extra investment versus keeping the customer and the business running? So yes, I think that was a big learning, that keeping the show on or keeping it running was really very, very important when we had this security incident. Like, I think managing one crisis at a time is still okay. Two crises at a time, we at once had forgotten that there is also the pandemic situation still going on, and this became such a big problem that it had to be reacted with a much better manner. So I think as organization, what is important is how do you keep your business running in spite of all of the challenges.
I would like to share one other perspective on this topic, which is what went through the lives of our IT teams. A lot of us that are involved in software development only look at it from the perspective of the code that we have to write and the product we have to create. But we also have to remember a behind the scenes IT team that's really making this all work for us. And when we went into this remote work environment overnight, over the first, I think maybe month or so, we saw close to about 400 to 500% increase in the amount of meetings that were scheduled on our enterprise collaboration platform. I work at Cisco. Many of you know we have a product called WebEx, which we sell to a lot of our customers as well. We started seeing utilization that was unheard of. And our IT teams working with the business unit really had to create 3 to 5 times the capacity to be able to support those meetings, because it's not just us having more meetings, even our customers started having 3 to 5x more meetings. And all of this demand literally came in over a 1 or 2 week period. So we established a lot of these tiger teams where people from anywhere in the company that knew anything about the product could actually jump in and contribute time and effort to help scale the software, to help address the defects in the software, to support customers and so on. We call them WebEx warriors. And then the other thing that IT had to sort of reimagine was supporting a huge amount of VPN connections, especially when you think of how most traditional environments are. I'd say close to 70 or 80% of the people come into work. So you're all on the corporate secure network, and about 20% may be working remotely. So your VPN load is only 20%, but now you go from 20% to 100%. So that's 5x the load on your VPN systems. So that's another area where our IT teams really had to work, I would say 48 hours a day, to build up capacity to support people to securely connect remote productive. And the last was around just basic infrastructure support. One good thing at Cisco was pretty much everybody is armed with laptops. One, you don't have to worry about do you have a computer environment or not. But the flip side to that is your IT support, your tech support, now suddenly has to scale across the country because people are not in the same physical location. So, and as new people join, you have to think through how are you going to give them a laptop? How are you going to set them up so that they can actually be productive? We actually did a bit of a postmortem, I think, as we went into month 3. And by that point, our IT team had shipped laptops to 740 districts in the country. Just imagine that. Like, they put up a picture of the whole country's map and all of the places where they had shipped, and over 90% of those were tier 2, tier 3 towns. These are not your state capitals or the metros. So for your IT team to actually scale their support and their availability to get to every nook and corner of the country, that's it's a huge achievement. And most of the time they're behind the scenes. So the next time you run into somebody from IT, take a moment to thank them, because they're doing a lot of work behind the scenes to enable us to be productive.
Exactly. So I think they are also coming out with the flying colors even this testing time, right? So they consider their whomever they are giving the service as the customer, at like end customers or business users itself, and they are giving the best. Thanks for bringing that moment also to everyone's attention, Jay. So I have one question from Shantanu for Sonali. So we heard quite a lot of innovation that is happening in this challenging time to address the technical challenges. So this is regarding the question on did you see any innovation coming in the process of realigning how people work and 6 months deadline to meet the goal, not delaying the business value? Was there anything differently done, Sonali? Would you like to add on that?
Yeah, sure. So I think innovation is very, very important to both, react to such crisis in a more, efficient manner, especially. So innovation was definitely a big part of it, and I would say it was accelerated innovation because you also had to react much faster. So in terms of the 6 months projects that we typically would have, even if they are in sprints, how do we really get them uh, no surprise mode? How do you bring the innovation aspect there? So I would say a lot of innovation came in the manner where how can we do more self-service, where customers, when they reach out to you, if you are, for example, not available, or at that point in time when you cannot react because you have, for that matter, your UPS down as well as power down, and how can then you make your customer be self-sufficient to help themselves? Some of those things as simple as that, moving from self-service to a little more innovation in the way how you collaborate, right? So for example, some of the tools that we very highly used during the year is the tools that we use for workshops. In the planning workshops, we typically would use whiteboards and do in-person meetings, but we then switch to the tools like Mural, which also has those abilities for you to do better brainstorming, better idea generation, and shortlisting the ideas, which may be easier for you to experiment and fail much earlier. So making use of that, those tools, and the idea, keeping the ideas flowing, as well as trying to relate it with what problems it can solve. So I think innovation was not just at a technology level, but in every aspect of how we conducted our business. So definitely, I would say innovation was one of the biggest enablers for us to be effective in the way we operated through the year. I would say the innovation shifted from how do you bring in a new feature or a new cool let's say experience for the customer, to a little more how do you do what you do better and more efficient, and can you even get away with not doing certain things by bringing in some other reusable aspects into your delivery. So that's how I would look at this.
Okay, thanks, Sonali. So would like to understand that from a pure non-IT perspective also. Rahul, you have a lot of complex work environment, right? So it could be refineries, it could be the chemicals related. So would you like to add more innovation happened in those aspects to deliver to the business? Rahul, you are on a mute.
Sorry,
Oh,
sorry. So in fact, we are in process of exploring augmented and virtual reality, as I mentioned. Correct? It's one of my focus area. Uh, See, current scenario. If you have to do a troubleshooting in the refinery, petrochemical complex, or at a shop floor, the expert need to be there. Correct? The expert need to be there to guide the technician, take the action, and all that. But during the pandemic, it was very tough. Travel was restricted, and you then manage with your phone calls with desktop sharing and all. This is much more effective when you do an IT support. But in the systems, the use systems like this, where you have so many complexity involved, desktop sharing won't work. So for that, what is required is a real immersive experience. So what I have seen in terms of innovation, the adoption to the AR VR technology has accelerated in the last 6 to 8 months for our kind of environment. Until now, we have seen this works very well for marketing purpose and all that. So use of wearables, use of tabs, and there are so many companies, in fact, have mushroomed in last 6 months, who are creating the apps, specific apps, where you can teleport your entire physical model in digital format, and then collaborate with a technician, as well as the expert can collaborate, annotate, direct, so that you efficiently resolve the troubleshooting issues and all that. So I say, for us, from the mechanical industry perspective, this is going to see much bigger and faster adoption for the augmented and virtual reality. In the last 6 months, we have seen this is happening, but it will accelerate exponentially now onwards.
Great, great, wonderful. So, yep, Rahul. So you took us somewhat looking into the how the 2021 and beyond will look like. So let me come back to Jay. Jay, would you like to add anything? How does it look when we look towards 2021 and beyond? How this learning we are going to take forward into 2021? Would you like to add more? Maybe I'll request Sonali also to have some thoughts on this one.
Yeah, so I think we can certainly expect a lot of changes as we get into 2021 in terms of how companies will organize and manage work. I think the focus on getting people physically into the office and ensuring that that's the only way we work will not be there. I think people and leadership will be a lot more open in saying people can work from anywhere work is done and a certain amount of core productivity is met. I think we'll see I think we'll see a shift in real estate patterns around how people work. Rather than centralize, I think we'll start to move more and more towards a decentralized model. Particularly at Cisco, we've started this exercise in the US and we anticipate to do this in India as well. We are looking at a lot of our real estate investments and really shutting down things that don't make sense anymore, because if you had 25 people in a city and we had an office for them, now we don't feel compelled to have an office because for the last 9 months we've been working remote and we've not really missed the pulse, so there's really no reason to get them back in the office. I think the next big innovation is probably going to come in terms of how to manage large amounts of work that's done remotely. I think we're sort of going through a bit of a brute force right now using today's tools in terms of collaboration, GoToMeeting, WebEx, etc., as well as traditional Microsoft project management and things like that. I think a lot of those things will change to cloud first, completely democratized tooling that is going to keep people in the office and people at home at the same level in terms of access to information and the ability for them to influence and operate effectively. And then last but not the least, I think from a lifestyle perspective, especially as we do this for longer periods, I think people will get a lot more disciplined about, I may be working from home, but that doesn't mean I'm working all the time. That's something that we've all had to deal with, especially in the context of COVID and the fact that you can't really step out of the house, or you're not stepping out of the house. People tend to set up meetings at all times of the day and expect that you're just around. I think some of that will change. People will realize that although folks are working from home or working remotely, there still is a notion of what their personal space is, what their personal life is, and what are the core hours within which they're available for work-related conversations, meetings, or things like that. So I'd say these are the various different dimensions in which we will start to see changes. I'm most excited about the technology innovation that will come through to enable remote teams to be as productive as physically being in the same place.
Great, wonderful. Sonali, how is your thoughts and perspective towards 2021?
I fully agree with what Jay had said, and I think it will be silly to just go back to the old normal when things come back to the new normal. And new normal should definitely look much different and better. I mean, if you look at all the metro cities across the Indian, all of our Pune, Bangalore, Delhi, all of this, I think traffic is a big problem. Time people spend traveling is a very big problem. And spending those 2-3 hours on the road as opposed to with your families and at work or doing something which is satisfying, productive, that has to definitely change. So totally agree. I think tools, collaboration, even the employee engagement aspect will be very different. Today, again, still we try and replicate what we do physically on the teams and so on. But I see that there is more and more new tools coming in while organizing Christmas party for our teams. We explored some of these tools and they're really fantastic and cool. You can have team games and team events on online platforms like Kahoot, and many companies have tried them. So I think those would be more and more prevalent is what I think. And I really look forward to an experience which makes you feel at work, even being away from the work. So that should how the new normal look like in my view.
Thank you, Sonali. Thank you, everyone. So I think we are on time, and we just crossed 1 minute. So it was a wonderful discussion. If there are any additional questions that we have not answered, we will be addressing that through our communication. So thank you for the wonderful discussion. Thanks, panel and participants, for actively supporting through these questions and listening. Great takeaways. Back to you, Shreya.
So yes, indeed, it was a
Thank you,
wonderful panel.
Srijit.
Thank you so much, Srijit, and thanks to everybody of you who joined, and to our panelists for such a wonderful panel discussion, and for all the stories that they've shared. Thank you so much for that.